If you walk around MC's Rockville Science Center, you're bound to find a full-scale cast of a Tyrannosaurus rex skeleton. It was donated to the college by the Discovery Channel in 2019. When it arrived, MC science professors held a symposium where they spoke about it. You'll see some clips from it throughout this video. The actual bones of this dinosaur were discovered within the Hell Creek Formation in South Dakota back in 1987 by a guy named Stan. They nicknamed the T-Rex Stan after him. This one was most likely a male and lived about 66 million years ago. His life was active and he sports a few battle scars from it. For instance, there's a small hole and some missing pieces at the top of his skull. One hypothesis is that this was caused by fighting another T-Rex, because nothing else around was big enough to do that kind of damage to it. Part of its neck has some healed vertebra, possibly caused by the same run-in. There are also some broken ribs. All of the T-Rexes lived in the last part of the Cretaceous period, and possibly witnessed the final days of the Mesozoic era. That's when all the dinosaurs became extinct, except the birds. But that's a conversation for another day. T-Rexes were in a group called the theropods, which were closely related to birds. They did have scales, and it's highly likely they even had some feathers. And, like the birds of a feather, they may have flocked together.
And evidence that supports that, we have bone beds of relatives of T-Rex, bone beds that contain multiple individuals with adults mixed with juveniles. So that suggests they traveled in family groups.
A group of T-Rexes hunting together as a team must have been a sight to see. Looking at the skeleton, the first thing you'll probably notice is the huge skull. It likely had some big muscles behind it to support the hypothesis that its large head was its primary weapon. The enormous, thick teeth and solid-roofed mouth made it capable of crushing and ingesting bones with a bite force possibly around 7,800 pounds. That's like the weight of 3 cars coming down on you. By comparison, a human's bite force is about 200 pounds. Scientists have done CT scans and endocasts of brain cavities of T-Rex skulls, and from those, they figured out what parts of the brain were larger than others.
The part of the brain that processed information from smell was a very large part of the brain. And so we can then tell from that this was an important part of this animal's life, and maybe it existed similar to dogs, and smell would have been a very important part of the information it gathered from the environment.
Now, let's move down and talk about those short, stubby arms. They are a little comical. They couldn't reach its mouth, they couldn't even reach each other. They may have been used to stabilize prey or help during mating. Scientists hypothesize they evolved smaller to reduce weight so that the head could be as big as it was. It might not have needed those arms for balance when running. That very long tail took care of that and was needed as a counterbalance to the large head. Speaking of running, you may be wondering if you could have outrun a T-Rex. Engineers have been wondering this too. We don't know much about the T-Rex's muscle or soft tissue, but the bones that held everything up are right there to study.
Basically, in engineering, it's all about failure. We take things and break them, we push them, we think about their limits, and then step back a little bit and say, okay, let's not go that far.
By examining the bones, they can understand how much stress they could take before breaking, and then hypothesize how fast it could run before reaching that structural failure.
Notice that the stress increases as the thing tries to run. Now, this is based on the model of something walking and then trying to get to that leaping through air running type gait. And notice that we hit that maximum stress at somewhere a little over 6 meters per second. The thigh bone is starting to bend past the limit that you want to take, but the foot bone is also ready to go. And it's actually, when you go much faster, it's the foot bone that's going to break.
So, this T-Rex may have been able to run about 6 meters per second. By comparison, a world-class sprinter can get up to just over 9 meters per second. So the average person may have had a chance. They certainly would have had the motivation. I mentioned earlier the T-Rex was found in South Dakota. 66 million years ago, South Dakota didn't look anything like it does today. Right now, about a third of the Earth is covered by land. Back then, it was more like a fifth. The supercontinent Pangaea split up several hundreds of millions of years earlier, and volcanic activity was occurring below the oceans, which caused sea levels to rise. Just like adding gravel to a bucket of water, the water will go up. There were no polar ice caps. The high sea levels caused many parts of North America to be covered by shallow seas. And it wasn't just the sea levels that rose. Global temperatures were about 15 degrees higher than today. This was due to volcanic activity putting many gases into the air. The atmosphere had about 2.5 times the amount of carbon dioxide it has today. During that time, South Dakota was a subtropical environment with swamps and deltas and just teeming with dinosaurs. Even though they lived millions of years ago, the impact of dinosaurs and other prehistoric life is a huge part of how things are today.
You know, if something dies in an aerobic environment with lots of oxygen around, then the bacteria will decompose those objects and return the carbon to carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But in an anaerobic environment, when you're at the bottom of the ocean or the bottom of a swamp, that oxygen isn't available. And so instead of turning into carbon dioxide, you turn into hydrocarbons. And those are the hydrocarbons that we dig out and burn for energy.
Yup, fossil fuels. Most of our machines and gadgets today are powered by a lot of what lived millions of years ago during the Cretaceous period, when our T-Rex roamed around. But then, almost in an instant, the dinosaurs were gone. As for what ended their time on Earth, scientists widely agree it was from the destruction caused by a giant meteor that hit Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula around 66 million years ago, which caused all sorts of destruction on the ground and in the atmosphere. Evidence of this can be found within the Hell Creek Formation where our T-Rex was found.
When the asteroid hit, the bedrock was instantly melted and sent up into the atmosphere and rained down thousands of miles away. So the Hell Creek Formation is 3,000 kilometers from the impact site in Yucatan, but you see here evidence of that impact there. This is a layer that's very rich in the chemical element iridium, which is very abundant in asteroids, very rare in the Earth's crust. We find this at meteorite impact sites.
In fact, a location in the Hell Creek Formation was recently discovered with organisms that were directly killed within hours or days by suffocating from the debris caused by that event. So, the next time you walk up to the bones of this prehistoric predator, you'll know a little bit more about it, what the world was like when it was walking around, and how it's still an important part of life today. If you'd like to learn more about biology, geology, chemistry, or engineering, go to montgomerycollege.edu and register for one of our classes. Thanks for watching.